I helped my cousin get approved for a $30,000 Navy Federal personal loan after getting denied for the first time. And the craziest part, his credit score barely changed. Most people think that it's all about having a high credit score, but Navy Federal actually looks at something way more important that most people never talk about. If you don't understand this one thing, you could have a 760 credit score and still get denied. So in this video, I'm gonna break down the exact steps that return that denial into a $30,000 approval and how you can do it too, all without documentation required. Before we dive into the strategy, let me explain why these loans are so amazing and why millions of people are trying to get them. First, these are unsecured personal loans, which means that Navy Federal can't take your car or your house if you don't pay them back. That's completely different from auto loans or mortgages where they can repossess your stuff. Because of the risk, they are much pickier on who gets approved. Second is that the loan amounts are absolutely insane compared to other major lenders. Most personal loans from banks like Chase or Wells Fargo start at $5,000 minimum, but Navy Federal starts at just $250 and go all the way up to $50,000. That massive range means whether you need a few $100 for an emergency or tens of thousands of dollars for a major expense. Third, and this is the big one that everyone gets excited about, is that majority of the time, no documentation is required. So no digging up pay stubs from 3 months ago, no tax returns, no bank statements, absolutely nothing. You just fill out a simple online application and literally just have money deposited into your checking account within a few minutes if you get approved. Fourth is that the interest rates are competitive even in today's high rate environment. Right now, they're offering 8.99% to 18% APR for loans up to 36 months and 14.29% to 18% for loans between 37 and 60 months. When credit cards are charging between 25 to 30%, these loans make way more sense. And here's something that most people don't know. If you're active duty or retired military with direct deposit, you can get an additional 0.25% APR discount on your loan. There's also something called a senior enlisted reward program for E7 to E9 ranks that gives you 1% rate discount on certain personal loans as well. So just keep in mind that these discounts cannot be stacked together, so you guys gotta pick whichever one is best for your situation. Now, here's something that most people completely mess up when they are applying for Navy Federal personal loans. While Navy Federal personal loans are primarily based on your personal credit profile, your relationship with Navy Federal still plays a factor. Navy Federal does have something called an internal credit score that ranges between 100 to 450 points, but this mainly applies to the credit card applications and not their personal loans. For personal loans, your credit profile is what really matters, but that does not mean that your Navy Federal relationship is worthless. Think about it from their perspective. They're a credit union and not a bank. They're member-owned, which means that they're supposed to take care of their members. But if you just open an account yesterday and immediately apply for a $50,000 loan, what kind of relationship do you really have with them? Pretty much none. The biggest mistake that people make is opening their Navy Federal account and applying for a personal loan that same week. Even with a decent credit score, you will likely get denied because you have zero banking history with them. The relationship factor won't override bad credit, but it can definitely be a tiebreaker between an approval and a denial when you're on the borderline. Most people don't understand this relationship aspect. They see Navy Federal reputation for great loan products, open an account, and apply immediately. Then they wonder why they got denied despite having decent credit. Unless you have a thick credit profile, I would give it at least 90 days of banking activity before applying for any loans. But even if you have the right relationship timing, there's another factor that kills most applications. The second major factor is debt to income ratio. Even though this is usually a no documentation loan, they still evaluate whether or not you can realistically afford the loan payments based on the information that you provided. It's not just about your credit score. Navy Federal needs to feel confident that you can handle the monthly payments without defaulting. Your debt to income ratio is simply your total monthly debt payments divided by your gross monthly income. For personal loans, you ideally want to keep this at 36% or lower, though there's no hard number that Navy Federal officially publishes. So here's what gets included in your debt to income ratio calculation: auto loan payments, mortgage or rent payments, credit card debt, student loan payments, any other existing personal loans, and finally the new Navy Federal loan payment that you're applying for. For example, if your gross monthly income is $5,000 and your total monthly debt payments are $1,800, your debt to income ratio is 36%. Adding a $500 Navy Federal loan payment would push you to 46%, which might be too high for approval. Another big mistake people make is not reporting their income accurately on their application. When you fill out the income section, make sure that you're including all sources of income, not just your primary job. This includes salary or wages from your main job, part-time or side job income, investment income, rental property income, and VA disability benefits. Here's a tip that many people don't know. If you receive non-taxable income like VA disability benefits, you can actually add up to 25% more to your reported income. This is because non-taxable income has the same spending power as 25% more in taxable income. For example, if you receive $2,000 per month in VA disability benefits, you can report up to $2,500 in monthly income on your application. This adjustment reflects how your income would be compared to gross taxable income. While there is no official rule, most lenders, including Navy Federal, typically feel comfortable lending up to 20 to 30% of your annual income for personal loans, assuming that your debt-to-income ratio stays reasonable. If you're making $60,000 annually and requesting for a $30,000 loan, which is 50% of your annual income, it is aggressive but not impossible, especially if you have good credit and a low DTI. The key here is just to make sure that when you add a new loan payment to your existing debts, your total debt-to-income ratio stays at or below 40 to 45% at most. But even with perfect income and debt ratios, there's still one more critical factor that can make or break your application. Now let's talk about credit requirements, because this is where Navy Federal really gets picky. Navy Federal typically pulls from TransUnion for personal loans, specifically the FICO 9 model. This is important because FICO 9 treats paid collections differently than older FICO models. It basically ignores them completely. For personal loans, you want to be at least 720 or higher for the best approval odds and lowest interest rates. I've seen people get approved with scores as low as 660, but they usually have smaller amounts and higher interest rates. So here's what you need to focus on for credit optimization. First is your payment history, which is 35% of your score. This is the most important factor. You need to have 0 late payments in the past 2 years minimum. Next is credit utilization, which makes up 30% of your score. Keep your credit card utilization below 10% on all of your cards. Ideally, try to keep it under 1% if you can. Next up is credit history length, which is 50% of your score. There's nothing that you can do here on the short term, but if your average age is under 2 years, then I would consider waiting. Fourth, we got your credit mix, which is 10% of your score. Having a mix of credit cards and installment loans helps, but it is not crucial. And last up is new credit, which is 10% of your score. Don't apply for any other credit during the 3 to 6 months before applying for your Navy Federal loan. Your credit report needs to be spotless with 0 negative marks for the best approval odds. When you are finally ready to apply, don't just randomly fill out the application. There is a specific strategy that can improve your approval odds. For employment status, put employed with your actual employer. If you're self-employed, ideally list your business as your employer. Self-employed applications tend to raise red flags and can delay your application. For annual income, include all of your income sources and use the 25% boost for non-taxable income like VA benefits if applicable. For housing status, just be honest whether or not you rent or own and include your actual monthly payment. If you live with a roommate, then only count your share. This helps them calculate your debt to income ratio. Next, they will ask for a co-borrower. By adding a co-borrower, this may improve your eligibility, especially if your credit is on the lower end of the spectrum and if you're newer to credit. Also with one, you can get approved up to $150,000. But one thing to make note of is that the co-borrower has to be a Navy Federal member. The last step is crucial and where a lot of people mess up. Choose the 36-month repayment term specifically to get the lower interest rate bracket of around 9% to 18%. Anything longer than 36 months automatically puts you in the higher end of the bracket, which is 14.29% to 18%. Even though there is an overlap in the rates, the shorter term will give you access to the lowest rates possible. For a $30,000 loan, even at the highest rate, which is 18%, the monthly payment will be around $1,083 for 36 months. So just make sure that you can comfortably afford this before applying. Once you pick your terms, then choose where to have your funds deposited. Once you click submit, here's what you can expect during the approval process. Your application should go to pending review instead of automatically getting denied. And that's a good sign. That means that you passed the initial automated screening. The review process varies. It can be as short as an hour or 4 hours or even longer. If approved, you get an email with your loan terms, the amount, interest rate, and the monthly payment. Navy Federal's funding is incredibly fast. Once you accept the terms online, the money can be deposited into your account within 30 minutes in many cases. If you do get denied, don't panic and definitely don't immediately apply again. The denial letter will tell you specific information that you can use to improve for next time. Here's what to do based on different denial reasons. If it's income related, make sure that you're reporting all income sources correctly, including the 25% boost for non-taxable income like VA benefits. Also check that your debt to income ratio isn't too high. If it is credit related, then clean up any negative marks on your credit report and wait at least 90 days before reapplying. Sometimes paying off collections or disputing errors can make a huge difference. If this is your situation, I actually created a solution. I created a credit repair software called Credit Rehab Pro that makes this process super simple. It allows you to dispute as many accounts as you want across all 3 bureaus in just seconds. You can create dispute letters tailored to your specific situation and print them out at home. I'll drop a link down in the description, or you can scan this QR code if you want to check it out. If you got a partial approval, they might have offered you a smaller amount than you requested. This is actually good news because it means that you qualify, but just not for the full amount. You can accept a smaller loan and reapply for more after making payments for 6 to 12 months. Now let me share some insider tips that can push your approval odds even higher. First is your loan history. Having personal loans from different lenders actually helps your Navy Federal application. It shows that other banks trust you with unsecured debt. If you can get approved for a personal loan through Livestream, SoFi, or Upgrade First, it significantly boosts your Navy Federal approval odds. Second is the account balance strategy. Now, this may sound counterintuitive, but try to have at least the loan amount that you're requesting sitting into your Navy Federal accounts when you apply. If you were asking for $25,000, having $25,000 or more in combined checking and saving account balances show that you can theoretically pay back the loan immediately if needed. I would only do this if you want to build loan history, but I imagine that most people with $25,000 sitting in their bank account won't ask for a $25,000 loan. So that is the exact process to get approved for the Navy Federal personal loan up to $50,000. But here's the thing that I didn't tell you at the beginning of this video. Everything that I share with you could be completely useless if you make certain mistakes that most new Navy Federal members make. These mistakes can get your account shut down, keep your credit limits low, and worst of all, get you permanently banned from all of their best products. Click on this video right here where I will reveal the 5 costly mistakes that you need to avoid with Navy Federal Credit Union. Trust me, you don't want to learn these the hard way like thousands of other people have. I'll see you in the next one.